it's not that famous, but it has media content written about it a fair number of times. It has some popular videos made by other YouTubers as well, so if you've heard of it before, I'm sorry that I'm making more content about it, but just to say ASMR. I saw that Bailey Ryan, I don't know how to pronounce her name, talked about this case. So it is about the murder of a husband by a woman called Katherine, and we will be discussing sexual violence, topics of dismemberment, and we're gonna be talking about, general brutal stuff, but it is not too graphic. I think, like, there are more graphic and horrible videos out there, so I would say it's like a medium. And I will give you another disclaimer when I will get into like very graphic stuff, but if you are triggered either by assault topics or stuff like that, please click out, go watch a Whisper Rumble or something. I don't want to trigger you. So let's get into the video. The disclaimer, that's like so long. I'm just gonna like read from my screen. I've been writing it all day, so it's from Wikipedia and other different kinds of websites that had more information and facts about this case. So, Katherine Mary Knight, that's her full name, was born on the 24th of October 1955. She's currently 66 years old, and she's in the Silverwater Women's Correctional Center. It's a minimum and maximum security prison, and she was the first Australian woman to be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole because of the nature of her crime. And she's basically been in there for 22 years, and the crime was that she killed her husband, and she did gruesome stuff with his body, like, which involves cooking. Use your imagination, but we'll get into it. And she even intended to feed her husband to his kids. Yeah. Let's talk about what might have led to this woman's eventual demise. I guess let's talk about her family life and how she started out in life. So her mom is called Barbara Ruffin. I'm just gonna pronounce it as Ruffin. I don't know if it's different. And her nurse wanted her to take part in an act that she didn't want to perform. Barbara, so her mom, would tell her to put up with it and stop complaining. Katherine claims that she was frequently assaulted by several members of her family, though not by her father, which continued until she was aged 11. Although there are doubts about these details, psychiatrists accept her claims, and the events have been largely confirmed by the other members of the family. So there was a lot of abuse going on in the household, and she was like being raised by really, really dysfunctional people. Barbara's great-grandmother was an indigenous Australian woman from the Moree area who had married an Irishman. Barbara was proud of this fact and identified as Aboriginal. This was kept as a family secret, as there was like considerable racism in the area that they lived in at the time, and Barbara's descent was a source of tension for their children. Apart from her twin sister, Katherine was not really close to anyone but her uncle, Oscar Knight. He was a champion horseman. He actually ended up committing suicide in 1969, and she was so devastated that she thought that his ghost was actually visiting her, like at night, and she still continues to maintain that his ghost visits her, like all the time. And after this incident, the family moved back to Aberdeen. When Katherine was a teenager, she attended Muswellbrook High School, where she became a loner and is remembered by her classmates as a bully who stood over small children. She assaulted at least one boy at school with a weapon, it's not specified, and was once injured by a teacher who was subsequently found to have acted in self-defense. So I feel like she was copying the behavior she saw in her house. By contrast, when she was not in a state of rage, she was a very good student and she earned awards for her good behavior. But she left school at 15 and she hadn't learned how to read or write. So I don't know how that like goes together, but maybe she was dyslexic and nobody knew. I don't know. It was like the 50s, like 60s, so we will never know. She actually started working in a clothing factory when she left school at 15, and she was working as a cutter. And after 12 months, she left to start what she referred to as her dream job, cutting up offal at the local abattoir. So she was working in a slaughterhouse. There, she was quickly promoted to boning and was given her own set of butcher's knives. This will be important later. At home, the knives were hung over her bed so that they would always be handy if I needed them, she said. She said So, in 1973, she met someone, and this led to her first ever marriage. And yes, there will be more than one marriage in this woman's life. I don't know how anyone didn't get the red flag, but you will see what I'm talking about. So, the story goes like this. While working at the slaughterhouse, she meets a co-worker, David Stanford Kellett. And according to another article that I read, he was a truck driver, so he might be he might have been driving the meat after, they were preparing them. So David was also, just like her father, a very heavy drinker. He was an alcoholic. He had reason to why he was dealing with his emotions like that. He was actually haunted by past trauma from his previous job. He had a job in the railway in Coffs Harbour, where he witnessed his best friend being killed in front of him in a shunting accident. And later on, another similar experience, would happen, where he saw a crash happen, where a train had struck a bus, and it actually resulted in the death of 6 school children. He went in and he rescued the people from the bus, but 6 of the kids had died. So because of these traumas, he, I think, was using alcohol as a coping mechanism, and he lost his job in the railway after that incident, because his behavior was deteriorating, and his job performance was deteriorating, and he moved on to the slaughterhouse, where he got work in Aberdeen, and that way he met Catherine's brother, which led him to meet Katherine. So when David would get into fights, I'm assuming because he was an alcoholic and the temper of drunk people, Katherine would actually step in and back him up using violence. She used her fists, so she was really strong, and she was actually really well known in Aberdeen for physically threatening anyone who would basically get in her way and who would upset her. In 1974, they eventually got married, and they got married because she requested it. She must have been really convincing. And they arrived at the wedding service on her motorcycle, with David very, very intoxicated on the pillion. As soon as they arrived, Catherine's mother, Barbara, gave David some advice. As he retells it later on, she said, the old girl, Catherine's mother, said to me to watch out. You better watch this one, or she will fucking kill you. Stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing, and you're fucked. Don't ever think of playing up on her. Which she meant, don't ever think about cheating on her. She'll fucking kill you. And that was her mother talking. She told me she's got something loose. She's got a screw loose somewhere. And her own mother was telling that to David. I mean, if that's not a red flag, I don't know what is. And on their wedding night, actually, Katherine tried to strangle David. easy it is and asked, is it true that truck drivers have different women in every town? So she was kind of like just so jealous and enraged with jealousy all the time. And this would continue on to all of the other relationships that we're going to talk about, which is only 3, but this is kind of like a pattern. She just gets angry so fast. Their marriages proved particularly violent, and on one of these occasions where they had an altercation, a very pregnant Catherine decided to burn all of his clothes. So David's clothes were burnt, his shoes were burnt, and then she proceeded to hit him across the back of his head with a frying pan. And then she explains it later on and gives a reasoning for this. And she says that he had arrived home late from a darts competition after reaching the finals, and that's what it was. He was late to come home. So at this point, David was in fear for his life. He fled their house and collapsed in a neighbor's house, and he was treated for a severely fractured skull at the hospital. Police, after seeing the incident, because you have to call in the police if something like that happens, they actually wanted to press charges on Catherine, but she changed her behavior, kind of played nice, ingratiating David, and talked him into dropping the charges. So she basically went and convinced David to drop the charges because she would know she would get jail time or something for assault. In May 1976, shortly after she gave birth to their first child, Melissa Ann, David left Catherine for another woman and moved to Queensland. Apparently, he was unable to cope with the abuse anymore. The next day, he was seen pushing. The next day, Catherine was seen pushing her newborn baby in a pram down the main street, and she was violently throwing the pram from side to side. When people saw this, they reported it, and she was admitted to St. Elmo's Hospital in Tamworth, where she was actually diagnosed with postnatal depression. And she would go on to spend several weeks recovering from that incident. But after being released, a trigger warning, child abuse, she put her 2-month-old baby, Melissa, on a railway line shortly before the train was due to cross the line. She then stole an axe and went into the town and threatened to kill several people. Very, very luckily, a person that was known as Old Ted, who was foraging near the railway line, found and rescued baby Melissa. And everyone said that it was only minutes before the train passed. So she was really lucky. And Catherine was arrested because, who would do that? And she was taken again to the same hospital. But apparently she said she recovered and signed herself out the next day. I don't know how she gets to do that after threatening to literally kill people with an axe, and also putting her own child on a railway line. I don't know. But her this kind of behavior didn't stop there. She was letters to a neighbor and her 16-year-old daughter and convinced them to give her a ride. She said that she needs to take her baby Melissa to the hospital for some sort of medical treatment. And when they were inside the car, Katherine pulled a knife on the woman and her daughter and demanded that they take her to find her estranged husband in Queensland. They struggled in the car, and Katherine ended up slashing the woman underneath her eye. And again, when she escaped the car, she reported it to the police, and this resulted in her spending time in a psychiatric hospital. In another source, it says the woman escaped after when they stopped at a service station, so that's how she was able to escape after being slashed under the eye. And before the police actually arrived at the scene, to arrest her and take her to the hospital, she had already taken hostage a young boy, and she was threatening him with the knife that she had previously cut the woman and the daughter with. So she was basically disarmed after that, and the police attacked her with brooms, and she was admitted to the psychiatric hospital. Like I said, in the psychiatric hospital, she told the nurses that she had intended to kill the mechanic at the service station because he had repaired David's car. So remember, David left her for another woman, and Katherine just can't handle that. She was so angry, and she was angry at the mechanic that repaired his car, because that would mean that because his car was fixed, he was basically more able to leave her and go to the other woman. That was her thought process. So she was on her way to kill the mechanic, and then she said that after killing the mechanic, she wanted to kill both her husband and then his mother when she arrived in Queensland. And I don't know why this didn't, just make her stay in the hospital for a longer time, but the police actually went to David and told him about this incident and that, she was gonna do all of these things. He actually left his girlfriend. Why? There's a woman that's pretending, literally saying, I want to murder you. But yeah, he left his girlfriend, moved back to Aberdeen with his mother to support Katherine, and she was released on 9th of August 1976 into the care of her mother-in-law, and along with David, they moved to another town, Ipswich, a city west of Catherine was again very jealous, and apparently it's because of what he did when they were not together. But I don't know, like, if he was, seeing other women or whatever, or if he was just like being paranoid about it. But she was jealous, and soon their rage would ensue, and he would constantly throw him out of the house because she would be really mad, and he would move back to his old apartment, and then she would go back after him and beg that he would return. And this would happen all the time from what I can understand. And in May of 1987, I don't know why, but trigger warning, animal abuse, she cut the throat of his 2-month-old puppy in front of him. Red flag, for no more reason than as an example of what would happen if he ever had an affair, before going on to knock him unconscious with a frying pan. Seems to be her weapon of choice. So she's extremely jealous, and she really made it clear. In June 1988, she added another child to her roster. I don't want to say it like that, but the woman just keeps giving birth. In June 1988, she gave birth to a third daughter called named Sarah, which prompted David to put a deposit on a house because they were about to, have a family. So Catherine paid off the deposit when her workers' compensation came through in 1989, and then she decorated the house. Very interestingly, she decorated it with animal skins, skulls, horns, rusty animal traps, leather jackets, old boots, machetes, rakes and pitchforks. There was literally no space left, even the ceilings. She just decorated everything with those things. I can't imagine what it must have been like to grow up in a household like that if you're a child, After David and Catherine got into an argument, she hit him in the face with an iron before stabbing him in the abdomen with a pair of scissors. And of course, to no one's surprise, he moved back to his old house. But when he returned home to Aberdeen, I guess to take his stuff or something, he found that she had cut up all of his clothes. In the last relationship, if you remember, she had put fire to all of the clothes, so everything is very similar. He took a long service leave from his work and went into hiding because he was that scared, and she did try to find him, but no one admitted to knowing where he was. And several months later, David returned to see his daughter and found out that Catherine had gone to the police and told them that she was afraid of David, and the police issued her an apprehended violence order against him. So she didn't wait. She was like conspiring. She was making sure that he could never, touch the child again. In 1997, minute, it is going to get extreme. So the pattern here is escalating and escalating, and in this relationship it kind of came to like the very top. The boiling point was reached. So John Charles Thomas Price, lots of names, he was born in on the 4th of April 1955. He was a father to 3 children when Catherine was having an affair with him. He was reputedly a terrific bloke and was well loved by everyone who knew him. His own marriage had ended in 1988, while his 2-year-old daughter had remained with his former wife. The 2 older children lived with him. So John was well aware of Catherine's violent reputation as she moved into his house in 1995. His children actually liked her, and he was making a lot of money working in the local mines. And apart from violent arguments, at first the life that they had was a bunch of roses. In 1998, Catherine and John fought over his refusal to marry her. In retaliation, she videotaped items he had allegedly stolen from work and sent the tape to his boss. Again, she's getting really angry and doing outlandish things. This tape that she sent included, video footage of items that were actually out of date. It was out of date medical kits, and he got them from the rubbish tip of the company. So they were not even like products that were being sold or anything. But John was fired from his job after his boss saw this tape, and he was working at that company for 17 years. And that same day, he kicked her out, and she returned to her own home, while news of what she had done spread throughout the town they were living in. A few months later, John restarted the relationship, which I don't know why. Although now he refused to allow her to move in with him, so another barrier was put in their relationship because of what had happened. The fighting between the two became even more frequent, and most of his friends would no longer have they didn't want to do anything to do with Catherine. And while they remained together in a relationship, they didn't want to come around his house or be with them and socialize or anything, because they clearly could see how dangerous she was. In February 2000, Catherine finally snapped. After a series of assaults on John culminated with her stabbing him in the chest, finally fed up, he kicked her out of his house. On 29th February, he stops at the Scone Magistrates Court on his way to work. John's house. Very convenient. He then spent the evening with his neighbors before returning home and going to bed at 11 p.m. Earlier that day, Katherine had bought new black lingerie and had videotaped all her children while making comments, which have since been interpreted as a crude will. So she was kind of like preparing for something to go down, that she was saying her last words and intentions. She later arrived at John's house while he was asleep and sat watching TV for a few minutes before having a shower. Then she proceeded to wake up John, and then they had sexual intercourse, and after that he fell asleep. At 6 a.m. the following day, neighbors became concerned because John's car was still in the driveway, but by that time he would be, off to work. And when he didn't arrive at work, his employer sent a co-worker of his to see what was wrong with him. Both the neighbors and the co-worker tried knocking on John's bedroom window to wake him up, but they called the police after they noticed blood on the front door. At 8 a.m., the police finally arrived at the scene. So, it also had been said that the co-worker immediately called the police, but, that's not my information to confirm. And when they came to the scene, the police actually broke down the door, and they found Katherine, and she was in a coma-like state. They saw that she had taken a bunch of pills, and they thought that they took, a bunch of pills to end her own life. As I said like 2 seconds ago, she was filming the videotape, kind of like filming it as like a will. So the plan might have been to end both lives. And when they rushed her to the hospital, because they opened the door, they see, blood, and they see her, and of course you're gonna be like, we have to help her, and she had taken lots of pills, so she needs to go and get medical attention so she doesn't pass away. And when she was getting medical attention, she actually said that she had no recollection of what had happened the night before. So yeah, and now I will give you 2 seconds to skip or something, because this will be gross. My throat is like dying. Anyway, guys. So the police breaks down the anyone didn't see. I guess it was like super early. Oh my god, but I'm gonna read you like a sentence of how he died and how agonizing it was. It must have been so painful to see like a glimmer of hope, opening the door and like being taken back in and just like slowly bleeding out. So yeah, while he was bleeding out, I think she goes to town and she goes into Aberdeen, withdraws $1,000 from John's account at an ATM, and he was bleeding out quite fast because he was actually stabbed 37 times at least, according to the autopsy, and it was both in the front and back of his body, and many of the wounds were extending into his vital organs. So yeah, I don't know why she got the money. I think she was getting the money for something she was doing later, but I'm sorry, I'm not doing very well right now. So she gets the money, right? She goes back to the house, and he's at this time, at this point, he's just gone. Rest in peace, John. And she was obviously so angry because one stab in the heart and you would be dead, but she did 37 times. And remember, she worked in a slaughterhouse since she was 16, so she had like amazing experience on how to, take apart a live thing, take the bones off and take the skin off and stuff like that. So she actually used the same instruments that she used on the animals that she would, prepare on John. So it's so gross, guys. Several hours after he was lying dead on the floor in the hallway, she proceeded to skin him. She hung his skin from a meat hook on the archway of the lounge room. So when it's kind of like a kitchen and lounge connected together, and that was the archway, the path to the kitchen. So she put the skin on that archway, and then she proceeded to remove, decapitate his head, and the rest of his skin, using the same knives that she used to decapitate the pigs that she would do in the slaughterhouse. Katherine peeled John's body. It says with such expertise and precision that she was able to leave the entire skin intact, including his nose, ears, genitals, mouth, and hair. Medical officials later reported that Katherine had removed John's skin in an experienced manner, allowing them to later reattach the skin to his body prior to the funeral service. Oh my god, did they have like an open casket? She then, after decapitating him, she decided what would be the best thing to do is to cook food. And like I said, the skin is like on the archway. She goes directly to the kitchen and starts cooking, and she cooks parts of his body. She also uses baked potato, pumpkin, beetroot, zucchini, cabbage, yellow squash, and gravy. And she puts 2 plates at the dinner table. She said next to each plate, she puts 2 nameplates. Each of them have his kid's name on it. The 2 kids that he has. Remember, their names are written on the plates, and as she was preparing to feed their father to his children. Oh my god. So there was actually a 3rd meal that was thrown on the back of the lawn. They don't know why she did that, but maybe she couldn't handle eating it. Apparently they think that Katherine tried to eat it, but she couldn't. And they tried to use this as to claim that she didn't remember the crime. Reportedly, she actually wrote little messages in the cards that she would right next to the plates, next to each of the meals. And also, the meal that was thrown in the backyard was found by the police, and it was actually the ass. It was John's ass. Okay. I'm so sorry, John. Oh my god. Yeah. Apparently she threw it out because her dogs were outside. So yeah, that makes sense. Her dogs were outside and she threw it out in the yard. Oh my god. When the police came in, they found his head in a pot full of the vegetables that I told you about, and the pot was actually still warm. Let's just go through with it. This is just so disgusting for me to read. That's why I'm stalling, but and as estimated, I don't even know, it was estimated to be between 40 and 50 degrees, and it was still hot, and the cooking was taking place in the early morning. Apparently that's what it estimated. And she actually arranged his body with the left arm draped over an empty 1.25 liter soft drink bottle with the legs crossed. So he was sitting on the table. That's how she put him. And this was claimed in courts to be an act of defilement, demonstrating her contempt for John. Katherine had left a handwritten note on the top of a photograph of John, and it was blood-stained and covered with small pieces of flesh. It read, "Time got you back, Jonathan, for rapping." So she wrote it wrong. She meant raping my daughter, you to Beck. So it's Beck is his daughter, for Ross, for little John. So she now play with little John's dick, John Price. wanted to convince the people that she was mad. Oh my god, I'm sorry. She would be alright. On the morning of his last day alive, Price sought an AVO against Knight at the Scone Court Chamber Magistrate. It was too little too late. On the day of the murder, she left her two younger children with her adult daughter. And this basically concludes that she had planned out the entire thing. And now, the last part. Oh my god, this is taking a while. Katherine initially wanted to plead guilty to manslaughter, but she was rejected. Later on, she entered a plea of not guilty on murdering him, and her trial was in 2001 and 23rd of July, but they did it in October instead. Anyway, that doesn't matter, but the jury, actually, there were people in the jury who were like, we're not gonna do this anymore because the photographic evidence was really, really graphic, and they basically were dismissed because it was that gruesome to look at. She had gotten a psychiatric assessment done to see if she was able to make a guilty plea, because they have to make sure that you're fit, like mentally sane, to make a plea of any kind. And after she was arrested for the murder, she claimed that she's been subjected to repeated violence and sexual assault, and she said that her brothers, when she was growing up, always assaulted her, and she alleged that her parents routinely beat her up and her siblings up with a dog leash and an electrical cord. According to her, her father, who worked at a slaughterhouse as well, frequently hit her mother, leaving her with black eyes. But the psychologist who evaluated her remained skeptical of her accounts. Her legal team were trying to defend her, claiming that she had amnesia and she was dissociating. But the psychiatrists were like, well, it might be true, but she is still sane. So they eventually diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder. On March 4th, when she was interviewed, she said that she didn't remember the murder, and she told the police that the last time I recall was, I don't know about your dates, but I went inside and watched a bit of TV. Although multiple psychiatrists diagnosed her with both BPD and PTSD, they still thought that she was sane enough and fit to stand the trial. So the judge who sentenced her said that the diagnosis that she has doesn't fully explain the time and the full circumstances of the killing, which come from factors not associated with the borderline personality. So he was basically saying, you're not, like, this act of violence didn't happen because you're sick. No reason has ever been given for the guilty plea, and despite giving it, Katherine still refused to accept responsibility for her actions. And at the sentencing, her lawyers requested that she was excused to avoid hearing some of the facts, but the application was refused. When Timothy Lyons took the stand and described the skinning and decapitation, she became hysterical and had to be sedated. this was kind of like the other most highly voted one, so I just wanted to do it for you. I will come up with some new